This interview is with Shirley Murdock Reed, who is a member of the Uinta band of the Ute Citizens of Utah. Shirley, we took an interview of Lorena Orge and Lena Sixkiller on termination, and we decided to follow up by having several of either the mixed bloods and the full bloods give their opinions of what they feel on termination. How do you feel about termination, Shirley?
I'm sorry that there was ever such a thing as termination. I really feel that it hurt the families. And also, I don't think that you can take people who have been raised as Indians and have just as think as Indians, who are Indians, and then all of a sudden one day say, well, you're not Indians anymore. You're going out and make your living the best way you can. I know in our case, my husband depended upon the trapping and the hunting, and we got by with the fishing and the deer that he could kill and things like this. But with this termination, there's no opportunities for work. He can't get work down here. He was a game warden for the tribe before, and all his brothers are on the full-blood roll, and his stepfather raised him ever since he was 7, is on the full-blood roll, and so he considers himself to be full-blood, but he isn't, and it's a little difficult to explain to children that you're Indian and your husband is Indian, but they're not. And also, the thing that I don't like, the thing that I find that hurts me the most directly is I'm trying to get an education. I have 5 children that I'm going to try to help get through college if I possibly can. I've had 1 year. And now that there's BIA scholarships available for kids that want to go to school, but I can't get one because I'm a mixed blood, because I've been terminated. I think it's unfair because I need this money and I could have that help just like anyone else. Julian never finished high school even. He couldn't go to college if he wanted to. And so there he is. He's unskilled. He's not a laborer. And I mean, he is a laborer. He's unskilled, has no training of any kind. And I'm trying desperately to get through college, and we just can't make it. And there's no monies available to me. And I think it's unfair. I don't like this termination at all. I wish that something could be done. I think the government could help the mixed blood kids that want to try to get through school, just like they're doing for the full bloods all over. It's not just the Ute tribe, it's all over, but yet still I'm unable to take advantage of this opportunity.
Shirley, I think when they first terminated the group, at least those that were of age, they did offer some type of educational training. But this certainly didn't carry through with the younger ones, and you were too young at this time. How do you feel now that what the government could do to help you?
I think if they would just make these BIA scholarships available to all Indians who have been enrolled. I consider myself an Indian. I've been an enrolled member, and I think I am an Indian. They can't change that. I feel that if the BIA scholarships were made available, that would be in one way a help. It would certainly benefit me. I think right now I really need help from somewhere.
If you were to make a guess, about what % do you feel Shirley have been successful through termination, and what do you think's happening to the rest of them?
I've said before that these people were Indian. They thought like Indians. And you can't take people that are Indian and say, okay, you're not Indian anymore. They were unable to conduct their own business. They sold their stock. I can look around me and see families that have just gone from bad to worse. And it's just because they were not able to conduct their own business. Percentage-wise, I really couldn't say definitely how many are successful. Very few. And those that were already successful before termination anyway. So it didn't help the people that were able to take care of themselves. It just made a problem for those that could not.
Shirley, do you feel you've really been accepted in your communities and that people hire you and give you the opportunities as they do as your non-Indian neighbor since you've been terminated?
Well, I've only tried for one position, and I feel that it was because I was a little some Indian that I was hired there. But when I moved to Provo, in the Provo area, we were definitely an Indian family. My children were treated as Indian families and as an Indian family, and there were only, I believe, about 5 or 6 other Indian children in the neighborhood that are there on a placement program. That is, they are taken from their family and live with a non-Indian family for the school year. No, I don't believe that we were accepted just saying that we're not Indian. We're still Indian in our eyes and in the eyes of the non-Indian. My family was definitely an Indian family in Provo.
Yes, they said termination was that you were to go into the communities and live as the other people, and that everything would be fine. And of course, this hasn't worked out at all. Shirley, I don't believe any of your children were enrolled, but I'm sure this is even hard to explain to them when they see other Indian children without any more Indian blood than they are that are enrolled and receiving help.
I'd like to tell you again that I really am. I'd like to stress this education bit, this employment bit that this termination has done to my family. Julian's not trained, and who's going to train him? Where's the money going to come from? Now, I could probably go on welfare, but I don't want to do that. It just makes me mad. Women on welfare get more money for their families than I do. And I'm sorry, but it just makes me so mad. I'm trying to do something with my life, and what happens? Can't get help from anybody. This whole termination bit was just a big farce as far as I'm concerned. It hurt me and it hurt my family. Something should be done. I don't know what. I think a start would be these scholarships being made available to everybody. I just can't see this. If you're mixed blood, you can't get anything. Makes me mad.
Shirley, then, if someone's listening and making an article on this tape, certainly something should be sent to Congress to let them see what they have done to the people. I will be interviewing other people, not only of the mixed blood group, but of the full blood group, and let them see what it has done to these people all the way through. Is there anything else, Shirley, you think you would say? Would you advise them to ever terminate other groups? And especially, would you advise them to split a group as your group has been split?
Very definitely not to ever split a group. I think that there may have been a few problems involved with the mixed bloods, but nothing like now. There is just, I've never seen such actual bitterness and hatred in families. It's a terrible, terrible thing, and it should never be done to any tribe ever again.
Shirley, who do you think was responsible for this termination? Who brought it about? When they first decided to terminate you, how long had you people known about it? Tell a little bit about termination as you know it, Shirley.
Of course, I was very young at the time, but I can remember people talking, and it was just all done so fast, so quickly. The first thing I remember, and was that there was so many problems that they were going to just divide the group and let each group act on its own behalf. That is, the mixed bloods could manage their own affairs and the full blood their own affairs and meet together and have meetings and try to get along in harmony. The very next thing I knew, it was going to be a complete termination bid. And as I remember, the meeting was Bob Bennett and Francis McKinley, and they were the ones that decided to bring about this whole termination. I couldn't understand why, but I didn't like the idea then. And since then, I've talked to several members of the tribe, and a man from the University of Utah talked to me and told me that Francis McKinley was doing this as he needed a little bit of power control because he just needed to have the control because he had some plan or purpose in mind for his tribe. Bob Bennett was there with him, and together I don't know exactly what happened, why they brought about the termination, I don't know. I can't understand for what reason. I could see no reason, no beneficial reason for it. I was very upset, although I was young, and I talked to my mother and told her I didn't like it. I didn't want to be divided. I didn't want to be apart from those I'd grown up with. But there didn't seem to be anything we could do at that time. I don't really know just why the whole thing came about.
Shirley, then you definitely feel that it has caused a larger bridge between the full bloods and the mixed bloods, and even between families. You really feel that this has been one of the saddest parts of termination?
There's no question in my mind about that. I can see friends of mine that were friends with me growing up that have their bitterness and their unhappiness. It just shows all over. There's no longer the we used to kid each other and have fun and talking about different problems that we had, but it's nothing like now. There's a smugness and a discontent that anyone can see and anyone can feel. They just have to come out here and be around for a while. It's evident. There's nothing to hide. It's here, and certainly in families. I know for a fact that it's causing happiness in families. My husband is the only mixed blood in his family. His brothers are full blood. The man that raised him is a full blood. How you explain this and how you get over the feeling, the rejection, I don't think it's a good thing. And maybe it'll take a long time before these feelings are overcome, if they ever are. I think there can never be a good feeling now between the mixed blood group and the full blood ever.
All right. Tell now how differently it has been with your husband's brothers and what they're getting out of staying with the full bloods.
Of course, they have their positions that Julian had. He was a game warden, and his brother is a game warden. After termination, Julian, of course, was fired. He wasn't allowed to hold that position any longer. So there we were without any income at all, and no way to get it. He couldn't be, he's unskilled, as I've said before. He has no special training, and neither has his brother. And yet his brother is still employed by the tribe and doing well. And while we're just grubbing along, and I decided I'm going to have to try to get back into school, and I'm trying desperately, but and Julian's trying as best he can, but there's nothing for us. As I said, we depended on the employment that the tribe offered us, and now there's nothing. We can't get help from them.
Surely you worked as an aide in the school and got such a desire to go back to school so you could help your own children to get a good education and to have something better in life. I'm sure you must have had a real rough time, and I understand you really came down with some marvelous grades at BYU last year. How did you survive, Shirley, and what are you trying to do this year now to go back to school?
Yes, I did, much to my surprise. I came out with some good grades there. I was a little worried at first. I'd been out of school for so long, but things sort of fell into place, and I did all right. Grade-wise, of course, it was very, very difficult for us financially. The kids just had to go without. There was times they needed shoes. But this year, I'm trying to get back in again. I don't know just how I'm going to do it. I tried for a BIA scholarship, but of course it wasn't available to me. It's a little late, but I really don't know exactly what I'm going to do about getting back in yet. I'm trying, but that's all I can say now.
Shirley, I hope whoever is listening to these interviews, if there's any chance of your getting a scholarship to go on when you so badly need it and are trying so hard with your family, that someone will come up with something to give you some help. I surely wish that the government would reconsider and think of what they have done to the people.
Around and dug in the ashes and ate the cash again. The next morning, the porcupine was furious, but there wasn't anything he could do. The meat was gone. So he went and looked for another buffalo, killed it, brought it home, cut the meat into strips, and hung it over his fire to dry. Nightfall came, and this time he looked around and he saw the pine trees growing. And of course, since they hadn't performed any great deeds in this world, they were small and were doomed to be small forever. But the porcupine decided that he'd had some use for these pine trees, so he hung his meat in the branches and sat down and sang. And as he sang, the pine trees grew taller and taller and taller. He sat and sang his little song. Purum-de-yavi purum-ba, purum-de-yavi purum-ba. And as he sang, the pine trees grew and grew and grew and carried his meat way to the top of the trees, safe from the coyote. The porcupine went to sleep, satisfied that his meat would be safe in the morning. During the night, the coyote came again and looked for his meat. He couldn't find any, but he knew it was around somewhere. And he pleaded with the pine trees, and the pine trees betrayed the poor little porcupine and gave down the meat to the coyote. In the morning, the porcupine awoke and found that he'd been betrayed by the pine. From that day forward, he swore off meat. He'd never again eat meat, but the pine tree would have to provide him with food from that time on. It was his duty.
That's really good one. Thanks, Shirley. That was a real good one. Shirley, tell your grandmother and grandfather's name and your mother and your father's name.
My grandfather was Henry E. Harris, and he married Mary Reed. My father was Glenn Murdock from Heber, and his mother was Pernetta. There was 2 Indian children that was taken from this reservation, Pernetta and Pick. They were taken by Joseph Stacy Murdock, and when the girl was old enough, he married her, but the boy returned to the reservation and lived here the remainder of his life. My mother was Lula Harris Murdock. She was the daughter of Henry and Mary.
Okay, Shirley, I've heard some say that Grandma Daniels wasn't the only slave that came to this reservation. Do you know of any others who came? I'm good.
Well, I'm not certain, but I've my mother-in-law, Lily Wash, has told me of a Murray lady. I'm sure she was a Murray that was taken by white people and raised. And I think it was the Allreds. Now, Horace Allred has mentioned this to Little Silver Times, and they had a picture of her even with the family. There were several white women, and she was the only Indian among them. And Lil had that picture. Now, what she's done with it, I don't know. She may have given it to George Stewart because he was looking for a picture one day from her. And I know that she took him to her house, and they went through her things. But I've seen that picture. I've seen it, and she was the only Indian woman in there. And I can't remember her name, though.
Okay, Shirley, we know that the Paiute religion didn't come here for many years after the Indians were here, brought here by a lone bear. Before that, the Utes had a religion. I read something that you had written one time. Can you tell us a little bit about the religion of the Utes?
Well, as I understand it, it was a very clean religion and closely associated with LDS religion as it's taught today. They believed in purification through fasting. They believed in anointing. This was done with earth, dirt held on the body, and the medicine man prayed over you. And they didn't believe in drinking. I remember that they didn't like any alcohol beverages used. And of course, there was at that time fermentation of berries and things. I'm not sure. The Sundance, to me, is very symbolic of this early religion. It shows the center pole, I think, represents Christ. They mark the 3 rings around it. They have the 12 poles that are extending out that each means something. And do you know that when they cut the Sundance pole, it's the Sundance tree, the forked tree, they don't just take any tree. There's a whole ceremony they have to go through, and there has to be 2 exactly alike. And the sun has to shine through both of those trees. And I think this is representative of Father and Son. And also, when they walk around the corral before they go in, they walk around 3 times. They blow their whistles. It could be, I think it's symbolic of the walls of Jericho and the blowing of the trumpet. I'm sure, and I wrote this in my paper, that I felt that there was something here before, that was someone or something had come and taught these people a little bit about the priesthood and why it may have been taken from them and restored again, and now they have to perform certain things to give to them. Of course, this is a certain doctrine taught around here. I'm not sure if but that's my belief. I feel that there was a religion, a priesthood given to the Indians of some kind, and if it was taken and restored again later, I don't know. But I feel that they did have a religion very closely associated with Christian religions as it's taught today.
Shirley, you've lived here all of your life and lived right on the reservation among the Indians. How do you see the Indian changing? Do you think things are improving? Do you see any changes, and how do you see the change?
Well, of course, there's changes. In the last 10 years, I've noticed a great change. I think, for one thing, there's a closeness of a family unit. I think they had this a long time ago. I think the older people had this closeness. And I think that they didn't like so much, mixing of, oh, you were married for a while. If you didn't like that person, you got a new one. The older people didn't do that. They had one wife and one husband, and that was it. And then for something happened, and then we had this period where just, I don't know, everything was up in the air. But now I really can see a difference. I think parents are more concerned about their children's education. They're more concerned about moral issues. Fathers are helping with children, and this is the biggest. You can go to the laundromat and see fathers folding diapers and fathers carrying babies and wiping noses, and it just wasn't done before. I think this is a big change, and I think we all want something for our Indian people, and we want it to happen right now, and it just can't. It's going to take time, and it's going to take our young people, I think. But attitudes of the older people are much the same, I think. But with pressures from the younger ones, who knows?
Shirley, they have 10 students out to the university now trying to help so that they can go through college. What recommendations would you make, because you've had to go through this? You are getting your education now after you've had a big family, and we're real proud of what you've done in the schools and what you're doing to help the students there. What things could you tell to help the university with these students?
Well, for one thing, these kids are really scared. I think they'll be frightened no matter. And I think they're going to need someone that's going to understand the Indian, because he is different. You might not want to believe that, but I believe they really are. First, let them know that you are truly interested in them and that Indians can achieve, and give them a sense of pride in being Indian. They are Indian. They're on a campus with thousands of other students, and they need some identity, maybe, some little club, some little thing that keeps their identity as Indian. And let them be proud of the fact that they're Indian, that they're doing something. And you know what I really think too? I think they need to know that on their reservation, there's very few, if any, college graduates among their own tribe. And stress many times that they are going to be the lead. They're going to be the ones that people that are the other Indian children, the younger ones, are going to say, well, they did it, and I can do it too. They did it, and I can do it. And what really inspired me, Norma, was I read a little paper one time that Eleanor Roosevelt had written, and she said that failures come from a long line of failures. And that's true. And so these kids are going to be the first link in that chain. They're going to be starting a successful group, and they need to know that.
All right, Shirley, I'm sure that you had probably some advantages that some of these students have not had. What help did you get in college that you felt was most helpful to you in helping you to succeed and to stay in? Because heavens only knows, I know you went hungry many times and your children went without for you to stay in like you did.
I think, if to really be honest, I think it was the interest in me as a person, really. When you go to a big university, you're just kind of lost because there's so many students and so many things going on that you kind of have to take the initiative. You kind of have to be the one to drive. But it wasn't true in my case. There was about 3 or 4 professors who was really interested in me, and they knew I was Indian. They knew I was trying. They knew I had a big family, and they helped me. They'd give me words of encouragement. They'd tell me, boy, you're really doing great, even if I wasn't. And they'd tell me, if I had any problems, I could go to them, and I knew I could go to them. And they'd give me books, and they'd help me in every possible way they could. And they made me feel that if I ever needed help, I could call on any one of them at any time. And when I was having problems in one particular class, I took my midterm, actually, without ever having a text because I couldn't buy one, couldn't afford it. And I was getting a D in the class, and I really felt bad, and I talked to Brother Lichty, who was, one of the guys that really made me feel important there. And he said, oh, well, I know the guy. I'll call him and talk to him. And he called the professor and explained the situation to me, and I was allowed to make up some tests and was allowed to go in and do some extra work, and came out with not the best grade, but still considerably better than what I would have gotten. I think it's important to make these kids know that they are individuals, know that they're important individuals, rather, and know that there's help available for them, and tutors. We had tutors there. We had graduate assistants, that was, if we needed help, they were there. We could go to them. We had lab people there that would help us with our lab experiments, and they explained things to us. And in the math department, we had graduate math students available for us. And I just really think that all this individual attention is what really took me through the first 2 years.
Shirley Reed again, member of the affiliated, it isn't affiliated anymore, I guess it's Ute Distribution Corporation, once member of the Ute tribe. Shirley has worked as an aide in our schools and has truly been loved by the Indian children and has been so helpful in our programs. Shirley, I want you to tell a little bit about how you feel about the programs that we're taking out and the Ute history and so forth that you see going on in the school. If you think that this is beneficial to the students, both Indian and non-Indian, and just what you think about it.
Well, I think I can tell you a little story that really happened to me. We were talking about taking this one Indian girl to do the Lord's Prayer, and she's quite a pretty little girl, and I called her mother. And the girl refused at first, so I called her mother, and her mother told me that she was a little shy about being associated with Indians, She wasn't too happy about being Indian, really. I guess, and she's a pretty girl, really. But I talked to the girl and convinced her it'd be a good trip and all the fun we were going to have, and so she went. And after we put on the first program at the administrators' meeting, when everyone came up and complimented us, and you and Mrs. Lyman came to the car and told us the comments she had received, and she'd been complimented so much on how pretty she was and everything, that I was sitting on the front seat of the bus, and the girls were getting on, and as she was going back I heard her say to one of the other girls, "Do you know it's really great to be Indian?" So I think that says it all. I think these kids are proud to be Indian when they can see how people react to them. And these programs are vital as far as I'm concerned. I think they're necessary. The kids need to know that the non-Indian is interested in him and his culture and wants to know about him, and that and the kids can be proud and happy to put on their Indian costume.
Okay, now I'm not sure you've been in on any of the Ute history classes itself, but have you heard any comments, and how do you feel about the Ute history being taught in the schools, Shirley?
Well, I haven't been in any of the classrooms, and I don't know the students' reaction to it. I think it's important. I think the kids feel like they're really a part of this country now. The Indian is really a part of this, the growth. He had a hand in it, and they can read their book. They know where they come from. They know a little bit about themselves. And this self-identity we hear so much, and good self-image concepts, I think this is important. I've heard nothing but good about the Ute history being taught, and the teacher that taught it felt that she needed more materials. But she liked it, and the kids were interested in it. Some of the kids that wouldn't do anything in any other classes, she got working in this Ute history. It was about them, about their people, and they were interested in it.
Where would you suggest that more trips and more things could be done to take these students to improve, again, this self-identity? And Shirley, how can we involve Indian parents more in the schools and in these types of programs?
Well, of course, this is one of our big hang-ups. How are we going to get the Indian parent involved in school where he doesn't feel the hostility? Prejudice is a double-edged sword, and they shout prejudice, but if they just look at themselves, I think they'd find out that how they really feel about the white man. They feel he's an imposition in their society. Once they realize that he's here to stay, and they're going to have to work together, and that they can work together, and then things are going to be better. And one way is getting the Indian parent into school, letting him really see what goes on in the school. I know my attitude's changed a lot by being in the school and seeing the problems that are faced. The Indian student in our school is really a problem. How to make him want to learn, how to make him, really want to get in there. I just wish I knew the answer to that. We're working on it, and we hope we come up with some solutions for fall. And But parent involvement is a must. Now, how are we going to do this? I don't know, really. I really don't know, but I know it's necessary.
Shirley, no matter what has been tried in the schools in the past, our Indian students, now this is not all of them, some of our top students are Indians, but not very many of them. We'll have to admit that most of them at the bottom of the barrel are Indian students. How do you see what can be done to change the attitude, and what are we doing wrong that the Indian child cannot read equally as well as the non-Indian?
Well, of course, you hear this all the time, that he's not ready to read when he comes into school. He doesn't have the magazine. He doesn't have the newspaper. Okay, that's what our Head Start's doing. They're giving these kids experiences. They should be ready to read in kindergarten. I think that one thing is going to help is if we can get workshops set up so that when teachers come in here to work with Indian students, they can be familiar with this background. They can know what he's like. And I think it'd be important if we could somehow get the parent and the teachers together before school even started, even if it's just a couple of meetings to sit down and talk with each other. Of course, the ideal situation would be a couple of workshops, maybe 2-week workshops, 3-week workshops where you're together all day long, trying to work at a common cause, a common problem, trying to solve this question, what can we do for the kids? I've seen kids that just won't do anything, and they're a problem in the class. They're loud, they're noisy, and yet I was given 7 of these kids in my class, and those kids learned to spell. They would spell for me, and they'd read. They didn't read well for me because they couldn't read, but and there was no discipline problem for me with these kids. I just don't know why, except that the Indian child, to me, is 100% more perceptive about your attitudes toward him than the non-Indian. He's super sensitive, and if you get someone in there that doesn't want to work with Indians, then they know it. Now, the Y has a screening process, and people don't work with Indians unless they want to. I think that would be difficult out here, but it would certainly be an ideal situation. Teachers only working here that wanted to work with Indian students.
Shirley, I also took a group of 7 and found exactly the same thing. Students that couldn't divide 2 into 2 in the 6th grade at the end of the year were passed a test given by the counselor on a 6th grade level. But when they'd go back into the classroom to a teacher that they really and truly hated, they'd flunk the test. And he didn't think they were learning. And when we took them out and brought someone in that they liked and cared about, they tested out on 6th grade level. I'm sure that this is an answer, that we've got to have people that are interested and truly love the Indian people and want to help them. Shirley, in Floyd O'Neill's one article, The Exodus to South Dakota, many have been very disappointed that we didn't have more on Grandpa Harris. And of course, since he had written this article, we didn't add to it. But at this point, Shirley, I know you have been told through the family about Grandpa's trip back to South Dakota and bringing the Indians back and so forth. I want you to tell the story as you know it.
Well, I was told that that he pleaded. You know, the government was going to kill off these Indians because of this massacre, and they'd done wrong, and they felt that just to get rid of them, kill them off. They'd done such a dastardly deed. There was no need keeping them around. And the family told me that Grandpa Harris wrote several letters and pleaded for their lives, but that wasn't effective. And someone somehow told him that he'd have to go there. And so he rode horseback for 15 days and nights, is the way I understand it. And carried some papers from here, probably giving permission to bring them here. I mean, saying that they could come if the government would let them. I think there was a document signed. Someone told me they had taken a picture of a document with his signature, Henry Harris's signature on, when the prisoners or the Indians were released to them, and he brought them back. And now I don't know. It seemed to me that I can't really recall the story, but it seemed that he came back and then rode again to meet the train. I think they brought them on a train someplace, and then they came across foot and horseback.
Now, was this from Meeker or from South Dakota?
I think this is Meeker Indians that I'm talking about now.
Today I am interviewing Shirley Reed, who is leaving for BYU to attend school. Night before last, Shirley's father-in-law told her a legend, and she is going to tell us the legend now. Start quick.
Well, Chalmers Wash told me this little story, and I think that maybe it has some meaning for me, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway, Norma. He said a long time ago, the bear and the cougar used to live together in the mountains, as brothers, but the cougar never really bothered the bear because he recognized that the bear was the king. It was his domain, his territory, and he was sort of the king of the mountains, and nobody ever bothered him. But this time the bear stole the cougar's wife, and this really upset the cougar, and it upset the cougar's wife, and she was screaming and protesting, but the bear carried her off through the forest. And the wife said, "Boy, when my husband catches you, he's going to kill you. He's going to stomp you in the ground. He's going to break all your bones. He's going to just really murdercate you." But the bear said, "Oh, I'm not afraid of that old cougar." And he stopped and he picked up an old piece of dry timber. And "This is what I'm going to do to your husband." And he cracked it and broke it, and it splintered into pieces and fell over. "That's what I'll do. I'll just break every bone in his body. He better not come after me." And he carried the wife onto the cave. But the cougar missed his wife, and he knew the old bear had overstepped his bounds this time. He came to get his wife. And when the old bear saw the cougar, he come laughing out of his cave because he was so confident. And he went down there, and the cougar just beat him up and almost killed him, run him off from his territory. The cougar took over the mountain, and the bear had to go find some other place to live. And from this story of the cougar and the bear, it just shows you that you must never steal anybody's wife.
Shirley, Chalmers is a member of the Ute tribe and was married to your husband's mother. Tell me a little bit about Chalmers, who his parents were, and what band and so forth he belongs to.
Chalmers' mother's name was Lucy Alhandrew. Her Indian name was Nanib. And his father, I can't remember his name. I can't remember his father's name at all. I can't even remember his Indian name. The last name was Wash, but I don't remember his Indian name. And they called him by his Indian name. His mother was Uinta, and his father was Uncompahgre. And Chalmers is enrolled as Uncompahgre, but his affiliations, his feelings are Uinta. He feels that he's Uinta. He had no children of his own. He had a half-brother, Alec, who was killed when he was a young man. He has a sister, Etta, who lives now in Oklahoma, is married to Lindy Topai. He has 3 stepchildren. He has 1 adopted daughter, Darlene Wash. Chalmers was born here. He was born in White Rocks. But his parents